So if we look at the latter part of this reading, these excerpts from the later chapters of the Second Treatise of Government, the first one here is about tyranny. This is very, very important, right? I think that, I'm not an expert in political theory. I'm not an expert on Hobbes or Locke, so I'm hesitant to make sweeping statements about either of them, but I can't imagine Hobbes speaking of a government as a tyrant or a government becoming a tyranny. The Leviathan needs to have absolute power, according to Hobbes, but it's just that which Locke denies government. Governments can become tyrannical. He starts out by saying, as usurpation is the exercise of power which another hath the right to, so tyranny is the exercise of power beyond right, which nobody can have a right to. That is, governments can go too far. Governments can, they can go wrong. And that is when they exercise power beyond right. Now, exactly what that means, there's plenty of people in America today who would consider the United States government a tyrannical government. And those are the kind of people, who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th of this year, and, most of those people are really crazy. There's no question in my mind. So accusing the government of being tyrannical is quite a big thing, and it has to be thought out. But I think all of us can imagine situations where the government becomes tyrannical. It's when it exercises power beyond right. But there's the problem. How do you judge when power is being exercised beyond right? I think all of us have perhaps our particular ideas of that. But Locke helps us to a certain degree in determining where that line is and what it would mean to cross it here in section 202, where he says, wherever law ends, tyranny begins. The representatives that we put in government, they need to obey the law too. And one of the marks of a government becoming tyrannical is that it is no longer bound by the law, or no longer feels itself bound by the law. It exercises violence, or transgresses people's rights, or does not obey the law themselves, right? That's one way of putting it. And then, the big question, if governments become tyrannical, do the individuals in a political society have the right to dissolve the government? And according to Locke, they certainly do. That this is a huge difference from Hobbes. That the whole idea of the Leviathan is that it needs to be something that can keep order. And my take on what Hobbes was saying was that if you give people the right to dissolve a government if they're unhappy with, then you just set yourself up for continual disorder. You sow the seeds of anarchy. Locke has been setting up the idea that individuals have the right to change their governments from the very beginning, when he said that there was a law of nature and that human beings, being rational creatures, knew it. He has a lot more faith in individuals and their judgment. And a lot of this, is justifying the dissolution of government, which basically means revolution, right? And that is that human beings set up governments for a reason, for a purpose, because it's good for them. Because governments protect their property and, to a certain extent, protect their rights, protect their freedoms. If governments go against that, if a government takes your property or transgresses your rights, then the very reason why you created government along with other people in the first place is subverted. So under those conditions, Locke says, human beings, individuals, have the right to dissolve governments and to go back to the state of nature, or to create a new government, or whatever they wish. And, one of the things he says is that people don't do this rashly. As he says here in section 223, people are not so easily got out of their old forms as some are apt to suggest. He talks here about the slowness and aversion in the people to quit their old constitutions. People are conservative, essentially. They're afraid of change. Locke's idea is that governments will not, people are not quick to dissolve governments, to lead revolutions. They're only willing to do it when they have to, when things have become so bad that they have to, just to protect themselves. And this is something we'll see later on in Marx, who thought that things were so bad for the proletariat, for the industrial worker in the 19th century, that they would be driven to have a revolution just out of pure self-preservation. So this difference between Hobbes and Locke couldn't be, I think, in my mind, more important. This idea that human beings have the right, and they can be trusted with the right, to change governments if they see fit. Whereas Hobbes I don't think would ever granted that right.